Hello, this is John Hoffs, and I want to present part one of my oral history, which is titled Growing Up in Hollywood. This is a remake of my original video, which for whatever reason YouTube said was aborted. Well, we won't go into that word. That's for a whole different program. So anyway, I was born in 1957. I was the first of my generation and the generations that followed to have been born natively in California. Now, I've lived for 31 years in the state of Tennessee, but once an Angelino, always an Angelino. You can take the Angelino out of the boy, but you can't take the boy out of Angelino. Well, the first thing I wanted to say was that the term growing up in Hollywood is somewhat of a misnomer, although it's used widely as an expression which means I grew up in the movie capital of the world. I grew up in the movie business, and the name for that, synonymously, is Hollywood. Now, in the 1970s, when I lived in LA in the 1980s, Hollywood was a rather shabby, seedy, in places, area. And in those days, the rents weren't too high. And of course, with gentrification, don't have the foggiest idea of what Hollywood is like today. But let us just say that people that said, I grew up in Hollywood, it was a metaphor for the entertainment business. Well, I don't remember the 50s. I wish I did. It's my favorite decade with the 60s. I do remember the 60s. My entire childhood took place in the 60s. I was 3 years old in 1960, and I was 12 years old in 1969, turned 13 in 1970. So if you want to talk about a childhood, not adolescence, mind you, not 13 and older, but 1 through 12, I'm talking about me. My earliest memory, I'm just getting rid of the preliminaries here. My brother's birth, 12/4/61, so that means I was 3 years, 11 months, and a few days old. So I could definitively call that my earliest memory, 3 years old. Then, 3 years later, almost to the day, but on the 22nd of November of 1963, I was in kindergarten at Brentwood Elementary School, and it was either the half day of the afternoon or the morning, but in any event, it was probably the morning. I was with my mother. She used to take me to the park a lot, and one of the favorite parks was Crestview Park up above Kenner Canyon, and it was very horsey, rustic. And I found a man's wallet up a hill. My mother let me kind of roam the hills, and had his driver's license typed on a stiff piece of paper, and he had cut up dollar bills, and it was odd. And I brought it to my mother hoping she would invoke the finders, keepers, losers, weepers dictum, but no, she said, well, when we get home, why don't you walk over to the mailbox and drop it in the mailbox, and the mailman will know what to do with it. So that's what I was going to do, but when we got into her Chevy 2 wagon, 63 white station wagon, and turned on the AM radio dial, it was all news of the Kennedy assassination. I don't know if he was even dead yet, but it was obviously a momentous and tragic and horrifying and mind-searing memory. And my grandfather was visiting from Chicago, and he was glued before the television set, the Zenith, black and white portable we had in our den. And he was glued to it, and I sat next to him and watched the next 3 days of coverage, all the way up to little John giving the salute. That was a picture circulated all over the world, saluting the casket of his father as the caisson drove by. And so I think at this point I shall stop, because I'm going to make very short videos of 5 minutes or so that I can upload them more rapidly and efficiently onto YouTube. So until I talk to you again, au revoir.